Hey guys, tonight we're stepping barefoot into a quiet room, thick with the scent of saffron and smoke, where a man with inky fingers waits to hear what you saw behind your eyelids. You're in a small Persian house tucked behind high courtyard walls, where the garden outside glows blue in moonlight, and the walls inside are lined not with books, but with dreams. Dreams, written on parchment, etched into bone, and whispered between generations. You're about to confess your own dream to someone who might call it a prophecy, or a warning, or nonsense. Just try not to lie. Dream interpreters hate that. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, drop your location and the local time in the comments. Let's see who else is dreaming with us tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk softly into the interpreter's home. The rug muffles your footsteps. A copper lantern flickers gently on a low table, casting gold shapes onto the white plaster walls. The man before you, barefoot, long beard, soft voice, motions for you to sit. He doesn't ask your name, just your dream. The silence that follows is not awkward. It's sacred. You start describing it. A river that ran uphill. A blue horse that whispered your mother's name. A tree whose leaves rang like bells. He nods, eyes closed, breathing deeply, listening not just to your words, but the way your breath trembles, where your voice falters, and how long the silence lasts after each image. He's not judging. He's decoding. Mainstream fact. In medieval Persia, dream interpretation, tabir al-ruya, was both a science and an art. It was commonly practiced by scholars, mystics, and healers. Some even specialized entirely in dreams, studying them alongside astrology, medicine, and theology. He pulls out a scroll. No title, no table of contents, just line after line of interpretations. To see a goat walking backward is a warning of lost fortune. To drink cold milk at night foretells a traveler's return. To fly over water means divine favor or indigestion. Quirky tidbit: some dream manuals categorized interpretations by taste. Sweet dreams literally were believed to carry messages of joy or rebirth. Sour ones, often involving citrus or vinegar, warned of jealousy or betrayal. Spicy dreams, especially involving peppers or garlic, were said to predict gossip. Yes, even back then, people feared spicy rumors. As you describe your dream, the interpreter occasionally hums. Then he begins to speak, not interpreting line by line, but weaving your dream into a larger pattern. He ties it to your age, your season of life, the state of the moon, the last thing you ate. He even asks quietly, "Did you burn frankincense yesterday?" Because apparently that changes things. Historians still argue whether Persian dream interpreters were more influenced by Islamic theology or pre-Islamic Zoroastrian symbols. Some see it as a clean evolution. Others say the old gods never truly left the dreams, they just started wearing new names. Your interpreter finally lifts his head. You dreamed of loss, he says, but also of clarity. The blue horse is not your mother. It is your memory of her kindness. He doesn't ask how that lands with you. He doesn't need to. He writes it down in careful, fluid script on a parchment you're not allowed to keep. This dream now belongs to the house, and so do you. You wake up on a cool cushion, the scent of saffron and ashes still clinging to your sleeve. The interpreter is gone. The parchment with your dream has vanished. In its place, a small ceramic bowl of pomegranate seeds and honey left beside your head like an offering. You eat them slowly, trying to remember your dream again, but already parts of it are slipping away like ink soaking into cloth. You sit up, stretch, and push open the wooden shutter. Beyond the courtyard walls, the city murmurs. Minarets catch the soft dawn. Somewhere, someone is already heating water for tea. But inside this house, time is slower, stiller. It bends for dreams. You're not the only one here. You hear quiet voices down a long hall. You follow them, barefoot, passing woven tapestries and candle-lit niches. One room is empty, but smells like cinnamon. Another holds rows of wooden boxes, each labeled with a person's name and a date, maybe a birth date, maybe a death. Then you reach the door that matters. Inside, 3 men sit in a triangle, speaking softly in Arabic and Persian, their hands making gestures in the air like drawing invisible stars. They stop when they see you. One smiles and points to a cushion. Another offers you a date, sticky and warm. The third, older eyes, the color of scorched parchment, asks, "Did you dream of water or fire?" You blink. They nod knowingly, as if that's already an answer. Mainstream fact. In Islamic tradition, dreams were often considered a third of prophecy, not as rare as divine revelation, but more sacred than everyday experience. Persian scholars and mystics believed that the Prophet Muhammad's dreams formed part of his guidance to others. So, dream interpretation became a revered skill, especially when interpreting dreams for others. They begin explaining some dreams are called Rahmani, from the merciful. These are the good ones, clear, gentle, sent from God. Others are Shaitani, from the devil, temptations, confusions, or base desires, and the rest just echoes from the self. Nafsani, your soul, talking to itself. The dream of a lion chasing you. Depends. Was the lion white? Was it smiling? Were you barefoot? Were you facing east? Every detail changes the meaning. A black lion during a full moon might signify a political betrayal. A yellow lion at noon could be a sign of recovery from illness. Unless, of course, your grandfather died on a Thursday. Then it means something entirely different. Quirky tidbit. Some Persian dream interpreters swore by the garden test. After a dream session, they'd send the dreamer into a garden of roses and mint. If the person's scent clung to the air after they left the dream, was said to be true, if not discarded as fantasy. Yes, the smell of your aura determined truth. One of the men opens a leather-bound book clearly ancient. The pages are brittle and faintly gold at the edges. Inside, hundreds of dreams. Here, he says, pointing, a boy dreamed of falling stars that turned into sparrows. He grew up to be a map maker. Here, the other says, a woman saw 7 cracked pots. She miscarried 7 times. On the 8th, she dreamt of a whole jug. The child lived. You sit very still. Historians still argue whether these dream records were real case studies or poetic allegories. Did the mapmaker ever really exist? Was the woman's story true? Or a cautionary tale shaped into a dream for later readers? Hard to say. The margins are filled with scribbled prayers and smudged dates. And perhaps that's the point. You realize this house of dreams is more than interpretation. It's archive, a museum of what Persian minds saw when their eyes were closed. They ask nothing more of you today, just to listen, just to remember, just to dream again. Later that night, you're shown into a narrow room lined wall to wall with scrolls, some tied with ribbon, others held open by stones. The room smells like cloves and dried ink. Your guide, a young woman with nimble fingers and an impatient smile, explains that this is where the dream alphabets are kept. Yes, alphabets, because dreams in this house don't just speak, they spell. She hands you a worn parchment titled The Alphabet of Omens. It's not arranged like a dictionary. No A is for apple here. Instead, it's structured by symbols, stars, animals, liquids, colors, and their potential meanings based on combinations, context, and even your diet. Mainstream fact: Persian dream books, especially during the Islamic Golden Age, were often compiled with elaborate interpretive systems. Some borrowed from Greek and Indian models, while others created entirely original taxonomies of dream meaning. These texts were not fringe. They were studied alongside theology, philosophy, and medicine. You trace your finger down a section, a goat walking backward still means financial misfortune. A broken ring signifies broken engagement, unless the dreamer was over 40. Seeing 3 pigeons foretells a letter coming from afar. Washing your hands in milk signals an apology being accepted. Eating sugar while floating is, well, debated. There's a whole column for liquids alone. Water, blood, honey, wine, milk. Each carries different meanings depending on its temperature, container, and how it interacts with other symbols. Quirky tidbit: one ancient interpreter swore that hiccuping in a dream meant that someone nearby was hiding money. Another believed that if you smelled roses but couldn't see them, someone was speaking well of you behind your back. Dream logic, apparently, is very nosy. The young woman rolls out another scroll. This one has drawings, basic outlines of animals, each labeled in neat Kufic script. Snake, wolf, rooster, peacock. You notice something odd. There are two snakes, one coiled, one slithering. She explains, the coiled snake is fear of what has not happened. The slithering snake is danger already moving towards you. Same animal, totally different omens. She then tells you about a category called double signs, when two dream elements appear together and change each other's meanings. Dreaming of fire. Bad. Dreaming of fire while wearing white. Good. Dreaming of fire while eating grapes. Depends on the color of the grapes. Yes, it gets that weird. Historians still argue whether these systems were taken literally or symbolically. Did dreamers believe that stepping in mud during a dream really foretold heartbreak? Or were these metaphors used to shape behavior, encouraging people to be cautious, generous, honest? You wonder if it matters. Because sitting here, surrounded by scrolls and candlelight, it feels less like decoding dreams and more like learning another language altogether. A language built not from grammar, but from memory, emotion, fear, hope. She invites you to write your own dream symbol. You hesitate. Then, slowly you draw a small figure, a bird with a cloud for wings. She doesn't ask what it means. She just nods and tucks it into the scroll with all the others. One more letter in the alphabet of omens. You're led through a covered walkway where vines dangle like sleepy serpents from the wooden beams above. Crickets chirp in lazy rhythm. Somewhere in the distance a fountain gurgles. You follow your guide to a sunken garden at the heart of the compound, where moonlight slips across stone tiles and mulberry trees lean inward like eavesdroppers. This is the garden of dreamers, she tells you. Not because it grows dreams, but because so many have been dreamed here. She points to the stone benches circling the pool. People sit here before sleep, she says, then return after dawn. No one records their dreams inside their own homes. Too much ego, too many walls. Here, the stars over here, the air is cleaner. The dreaming is purer. Mainstream fact. Persian philosophers like Avicenna, Ibn Sina described dreams as a mode of accessing the active intellect, a layer of divine intelligence that intermediates between the human soul and the celestial spheres. By sleeping in clean, open spaces, especially gardens, people believed they were more likely to receive true visions, free of distortion or delusion. You lie down beneath a fig tree. The stone beneath you still holds the warmth of the sun. Your guide leaves without a word, and sleep takes you. In your dream, you're riding a carpet made of books. Below you, a city on fire. Above you, a sky full of birds. One of them is shaped like your father's hand. You wake just as dawn breaks. The sun slips over the wall like a shy cat. A boy with a shaved head and a box of chalk approaches. He asks for your dream. You tell him. He listens silently, then begins to draw. Not words, pictures. The fire becomes a candle. The books become ladders. The hand-shaped bird becomes a key. Quirky tidbit. Some Persian dream interpreters were also artists, and their interpretations were not spoken or written, but drawn. These dream cartographers created what they called Naksh-e-Roya maps of dream experience, where symbols became locations and pathways between them were marked like pilgrimage routes. Yes, your dream could become a city plan. The boy hands you your map. It's not perfect. It wobbles at the edges, and one of the birds looks more like a potato. But it's yours. Historians still argue whether these dream maps were used for psychological healing, spiritual practice, or simply as keepsakes. Some scholars insist they were meditative tools to be reflected upon nightly. Others believe they were conversation pieces for wealthy patrons eager to show off their subconscious sophistication. You fold the map carefully, as if it might tear the wrong way and change what it means. Someone brings tea. You drink it slowly, letting the cardamom and rosewater drift up into your brain. You don't speak again until the cup is empty. No one here rushes meaning, because dreams, like gardens, bloom on their own schedule. Back inside, the stone floor feels cooler beneath your bare feet. You trail behind a tall man in a saffron robe who hums under his breath and smells like old parchment and lemons. He leads you to a chamber that smells strongly of vinegar and dried apricots. On the walls, framed behind glass, are rows upon rows of collected dreams, each dream paired with a name and a diagnosis. Welcome to the medical wing. Yes, in this house of dreams, your subconscious isn't just for poetry, it's a diagnostic tool. Mainstream fact: Persian physicians, especially in the tradition of Avicenna, incorporated dreams into medical diagnosis. Avicenna's canon of medicine included notes on how dreams might reflect imbalances in the humors or hidden ailments. If a patient dreamed of rivers overflowing, it could indicate too much phlegm. Dreaming of flames might signal excess yellow bile. These interpretations weren't treated as superstition. They were part of a holistic medical inquiry. The man in the saffron robe gestures for you to sit. In front of him is a patient, a woman, silent, her hands folded tightly. He asks about her dreams. She speaks softly. I was walking through a tunnel of mirrors. Each mirror reflected a different version of me. One smiled, one cried, one bled from the mouth. The physician nods slowly, then asks what she ate for dinner, how she slept, whether her gums bleed, if she gets headaches. He checks her tongue. Then he says, the liver is tired. He prescribes not only herbal tea and a walk at dusk, but also a different sleeping position on her left side instead of her back, and asks her to return with tomorrow night's dream. Quirky tidbit: some dream healers believed you could trigger curative dreams by sleeping with certain herbs under your pillow, like fenugreek for clarity, or time for courage. One particularly odd practice involved writing a prayer on dried pomegranate skin and placing it under the tongue while sleeping. Tastes awful. Dreams vivid. Worth it. You're handed a record book. It's filled with charts. Dream falling into honey. Diagnosis: digestive inflammation. Dream eyes filled with smoke. Diagnosis: melancholia. Possibly vision loss. Dream hands covered in gold dust. Diagnosis: early stage joint swelling. Historians still argue whether these correlations were real patterns or if physicians were influenced by patients' expectations. Did dreams reveal hidden truths, or were they simply clues filtered through bias, metaphor, and imagination? You run your fingers down a column labeled recurring images. Crow, blood, mirror, flight, water, teeth, blood again. You wonder if every mind is just a loop of 5 or 6 symbols playing variations endlessly. The physician notices your gaze. You can tell a patient's condition not just by what they dream, he says, but by whether the dream repeats. Frequency reveals more than drama. You nod. Then, without being asked, you say, "I dreamed my fingers were made of wax, and the sun was laughing." He looks at you. "Stop writing at night," he says. "Sleep earlier. Your brain is overheating." You laugh. But you take his advice anyway. Outside, you find yourself walking the edge of a colonnade, the kind that casts striped shadows like tiger claws across the flagstones. A breeze slinks through, brushing your cheek with the scent of saffron, sandalwood, and old rain on warm stone. The garden is quieter now, less birdsong, more hush. Your next guide is already waiting, a stout older man in a deep green tunic. He has ink-stained fingers and the posture of someone who has spent most of his life leaning over things that don't move. He is a compiler, a dream collector, an archivist of the unseen. Mainstream fact. During the height of the Abbasid Caliphate, especially in cities like Baghdad and Shiraz, scholars kept enormous dream registers called Tadkirat al-Ahlam, containing thousands of dreams submitted by both commoners and elites. Some dreams were interpreted, others were merely recorded, as if documentation itself held power. These books were considered important cultural texts on par with chronicles and poetry. The compiler opens one of his volumes and fans the pages gently. You expect words. Instead, you find layouts. Every dream formatted the same way: dreamer's name, date and moon phase, dream narrative, emotional tone, symbols present, bodily state, before sleep, final interpretation if any. You read one name, Yasmin bint Nader, date 4th of Shaban, waxing crescent narrative. I was digging a hole in sand. It never filled. Each time I reached water, it turned to ash. Emotional tone, despair, symbols, digging water, ash. Physical state, grief, recent childbirth. Interpretation unknown, referred to healer. Another name, Hamid son of Karim narrative. I flew through a door made of wind. On the other side was my mother's voice. Interpretation, joy forthcoming. He smiles at your interest. Patterns emerge, he says. When you read 1,000 dreams, you stop looking at the story. You watch the pulse beneath. Quirky tidbit. Some Persian compilers even indexed dreams like botanical specimens, assigning them species names. A dream of falling might be classified as subito descensus. A dream of teeth crumbling could be labeled dentia fractura anxia. It wasn't official taxonomy, but more like private humor passed among interpreters, dream nerd jokes. The compiler shows you a section marked Common Dreams During Illness. These include being stuck drowning, chased by fire, swallowed by birds, and walking through tunnels. Not bad omens, he explains. Just signs the body is fighting. Historians still argue whether dream compilers influenced interpretation or merely documented cultural anxieties. Did more people dream of fire during wartime because they saw more fire, or because fire became the collective metaphor for threat? Was the dream symptom or mirror? You linger by a page marked Anonymous Dreams. Some are single lines. I opened a door and was swallowed by music. I drank ink and forgot my name. A horse stepped into the moon and vanished. You ask why people would submit dreams anonymously. He shrugs. Some dreams are too close to the soul, then he offers you a brush and a square of parchment. Without thinking, you write, I stood in a library made of clouds. Each book had my voice, but none remembered my name. He doesn't ask for interpretation. He simply slides it into a blank space, nods, and seals the page shut. Your dream has been archived, and somehow that makes it real. The next chamber is dimmer, lit only by shallow oil lamps set into alcoves like sleepy eyes. You blink and adjust. A woman with veiled hair and silver bangles on each wrist gestures you closer. Her room smells of mint wool and something sweetly fermented, dates maybe, or apricot wine gone soft. She does not write. She listens. Her title, she says, is Mufassira al-Roya, interpreter of the vision. She does not ask what you dreamed. She asks what you felt in the moment between dreaming and waking. You hesitate. Confused, you say, but calm. She nods. Good. Confusion is honest. Fear is too loud. Mainstream fact. Persian dream interpreters often emphasized emotional residue over literal imagery. According to medieval treatises like the works of Shahrastani or al-Dinawari, what lingered emotionally upon waking was often a truer compass than the dream's plot. A terrifying dream could mean peace ahead if the dreamer awoke with relief, and a beautiful dream, if followed by unease, might warn of hidden danger. She draws a circle in sand before you, asks you to name the first 3 shapes that come to mind. You say, a ladder, a bowl, a lion. She nods and arranges 3 stones in a triangle. You are ascending, you are hungry, you are watching something you cannot tame. You frown. She smiles. It's not diagnosis, it's navigation. Quirky tidbit. Some interpreters developed personalized symbol decks, wood or bone tiles, painted with recurring images, like early tarot. They didn't use them to predict, but to help dreamers clarify what they remembered. If you saw a fish, was it a silver fish or a red one, swimming upward or still? Each card acted like a prompt, jogging dream recall with physical touch. She fans out her own set. You see tiles with a cracked pomegranate, a gate ajar, a sleeping dog, a face split down the middle, a mirror with no reflection. She asks you to pick one without looking. You turn over the mirror. No reflection, she muses. You may be waiting for someone else to tell you who you are. You laugh nervously. Historians still argue whether these tools were grounded in psychological insight or spiritual ritual. Some scholars trace them to Zoroastrian divinatory practices. Others see in them a proto-therapeutic method long before modern psychology gave us dream journals and ink blots. You feel the weight of the mirror tile in your palm. It's heavier than it looks. She tells you to sleep with it under your pillow tonight. You won't dream of mirrors, she says, but you will see something you've forgotten. You thank her and rise to leave. But before you go, she hands you one last thing, a vial of rosewater mixed with saffron and vinegar. It calms the spirit, she says, and if not, it makes excellent salad dressing. You both laugh gently. You take the tile, the vial, and the feeling of being gently unmoored. Some truths arrive sideways, like dreams. The garden opens before you. Again, dusk having softened the sky into lavender and burnt peach. Lanterns flicker along the paths, now their amber halos, swaying in the breeze like fireflies tethered to invisible strings. A man waits at the edge of a water channel, crouched low beside a basin filled with floating rose petals and cracked ice. He is young, perhaps the youngest of your guides so far, and he speaks with the gentle assurance of someone who knows he doesn't know everything yet. He introduces himself as a dream scribe, a title that sounds more poetic than practical, until he shows you his scrolls. Each scroll is a case file, a well-established fact. In some Sufi traditions and medical schools, especially in 11th to 13th century Persia, students and novice scholars were trained to record dreams not as personal narratives, but as structured case studies. These included the dream setting time, bodily condition of the dreamer, preceding events, and any spiritual practices performed beforehand. The idea was to create replicable documentation for spiritual patterns, something akin to clinical trials for the soul. The dream scribe unrolls a scroll, case 1093. Dreamer unnamed, caravan guard, condition, exhaustion, mild fever, fasting. Dream. I walked through a forest of melting candles. My sword turned into a snake. Aftermath. Guard developed chest infection. Fever worsened, recovered after 6 days of ginger tea and cold compress. Conclusion: heat symbolism possibly indicated early inflammation. Sword to snake possibly reflected a perceived loss of defense during stress. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Or maybe he just missed his wife. He pulls out another. Case 1215 Dreamer. Merchant's wife, pregnant. Dream. The moon wept into a well. A goat drank the tears. Interpretation not recorded. Outcome: child, born healthy. Dream later, considered auspicious and shared among midwives. You ask how many dreams he's written down. He answers 432 so far. A curious detail: one popular scroll from Nishapur in the early 13th century included a section titled Dreams While Constipated. It listed symbols believed to be caused by internal blockage, being stuck in a crowd, pulling endlessly on ropes, or trying to speak, but producing only sand. A physician added a note in the margin. Perhaps these are not metaphors, but messages from the colon. You try not to laugh too loud. He points to his ink, mixed with gallnut and indigo, and shows you the symbols he uses to code different types of dreams. Since he doesn't use modern punctuation or emojis, he simply refers to each one by name. Triangle, recurring dream. Gear wheel, linked to physical ailment. Sparkle dream after ritual. Spiral, no clear cause. Crossed lines, dream dismissed as confused. You spot many triangles. Do people really dream the same thing over and over? You ask. He nods, especially if they ignore it the first few times. Historians still argue whether this early dream documentation was truly systematic or just poetic journaling. Some believe it foreshadowed the development of psychiatric logs. Others say it simply helped people feel less alone in their nighttime imaginations. You unroll a blank scroll and are surprised to find a space left for your case. He hands you a reed pen and asks, "Describe the air just before you fell asleep." You pause. "Warm," you say. "Smelled like crushed coriander." And the silence had edges. He smiles and writes that down. Then he adds, "Dream unknown." But the silence was sharp. He rolls it up and places it gently into his basket. Dream 433 is now part of history, even if no one ever reads it again. Somewhere deeper in the garden, you hear singing soft, almost a hum. You follow the sound past walls of fragrant night jasmine and turn into a shaded alcove lit only by the gentle flicker of a clay oil lamp. Sitting cross-legged on a woven mat is a woman draped in layers of cream and gold, her wrists jangling with tiny bells each time she stirs the air. She doesn't greet you with words. Instead, she gestures to a shallow bowl of rose water, swirling her fingers in it until the scent clings to the air between you. This is a dream interpreter, but not like the scribes or scholars you've met. She calls herself a reader of breath and aura. In some regions of medieval Persia, particularly In more rural Sufi circles, women held roles as private dream guides, known for blending medical observation with spiritual insight. Often illiterate, but deeply trained in oral tradition, these women carried wisdom passed down through mother to daughter, aunt to niece, dream to dream. She hands you a small cloth sachet filled with dried amber fennel and crushed lavender. Breathe deeply, she instructs. As you do, she closes her eyes, listening more than watching. You carry a dream, she says, but you did not own it. You ask what that means. She explains in her lineage of practice, some dreams are said not to belong to the dreamer. Instead, they are borrowed or intruded by others' intentions. A neighbor's grief, a merchant's desire, or even a stray spirit passing through can plant images in your mind. You suddenly remember the dream scribe's note. The silence was sharp. Was it even mine, you whisper? She smiles, perhaps not entirely. She places her hands on a small ivory token marked with concentric rings. This will tell us whether the dream came from within or without. She spins the token like a coin, letting it settle. It lands on the side with the smaller circle, what she calls the sign of mirror dreaming. In fringe, dream lore, especially among village midwives and traveling mystics, mirror dreams are those believed to reflect someone else's thoughts or secrets. You are the glass, not the painter. People who receive many mirror dreams are said to be spiritually porous, almost like dream sponges. She sprinkles powdered rose over your left hand. If it tingles, she says someone dreamed of you recently. You do feel something, but maybe it's the power of suggestion. Mainstream historians often dismiss such rituals as folklore, yet anthropologists continue to study the lasting cultural weight of dream sharing among communities. In particular, records show that women in remote villages would gather weekly in small circles, not just to interpret dreams, but to track shared symbols, moonflowers, broken eggs, falling ladders. Were they signs of weather, disease visitors? She brings out a wooden box. Inside are 26 silk ribbons, each marked with a hand-stitched symbol: dove, fire cradle, horn mirror, and so on. You're told to choose 3 without looking. You draw the horn, the mirror, and the thorned vine. A call, a reflection, and a wound, she murmurs. That sounds painful, you reply. No, it sounds necessary. She wraps the ribbons into a knot and tucks them into a small pouch. You'll bury this at the next full moon, she says, so the message can finish arriving, even if I don't know what it means yet. Especially then. Historians still debate how much influence these women held. Some argue their interpretations were seen as entertainment or superstition. Others point to oral records that show local leaders, even minor nobles, once consulted women like her before making major decisions, marriages, journeys, ceasefires. You sit with her longer, sipping a warm brew of cardamom and orange peel. Then she says, almost casually, "Tonight, you'll have a dream you do not remember. But it will remember you." And just like that, She's done. She lights a second lamp. Your session is over. The lamp flickers behind you as you step out into the night garden again. A new sound rises, running water, but deeper, more melodic, like a chant in liquid form. You follow its call through an arched hallway where vines crawl along sandstone walls, their leaves trembling slightly as though they too are awake. At the far end, a domed structure glows from within a water observatory. Yes, you heard that right. A mainstream fact often overlooked in medieval Persia, particularly during the height of the Seljuk and early Timurid periods. Some scholars built small observatories, not just for stargazing, but for observing the movements of water. These were quiet sanctuaries, typically attached to gardens or madrasas, where scholars and mystics alike believed water could echo divine truths. The movement of a ripple, the silence before overflow, even the way a droplet separated from a leaf, each had meaning if you knew how to read it. Inside, a man in a moss-green robe nods as you enter. He doesn't ask for your name, just gestures for you to sit by the pool, which lies beneath an open oculus to the night sky. You can see the moon's reflection dancing across the surface. Around the rim of the pool are small bronze markers, each engraved with both constellations and dream symbols. The man leans in. Dreams are water, he says, always shifting, never still. He explains that this place is used for dream incubation, a practice in which one prepares to dream with intention, using sights, scents, and sounds to plant seeds in the subconscious. Persian mystics would often fast or meditate for days before entering such chambers, hoping to receive visions not just for themselves, but for others. A quirky detail: several incubation records from Shiraz describe strange phenomena during dream fasting, such as hearing voices from fruit, becoming momentarily convinced of owl telepathy, and one particularly famous case where a man swore the moon winked at him and he instantly understood algebra. Scholars now suspect mild heat stroke, but who's to say? You're offered a shallow cup of sweetened vinegar and crushed fig meant to sharpen the senses. After sipping, you're instructed to whisper your most persistent question into the pool. Your breath sends ripples across the moon's face. The man nods. Now, you wait. Historians still argue whether dream incubation was considered science medicine or ritual. In reality, it sat at the crossroads of all three. Dream chambers were sometimes overseen by physicians, sometimes by dervishes, and sometimes by both, depending on the community. The man brings out a water clock, a brass vessel with tiny holes in its base, placed gently into the pool. As water fills it, the vessel slowly sinks. You're told to focus on a single image as the clock descends. You choose something simple, a stone arch. No reason, it just feels right. As the vessel slips beneath the surface, the man closes his eyes and murmurs a chant. The acoustics of the chamber catch his voice, folding it into soft echoes until it feels like there are 5 versions of him singing in harmony. Then, silence. You don't remember falling asleep, but you remember the dream. You stand under the arch. A woman with golden thread in her hair hands you a sealed jug. You open it, and a swarm of fireflies escape, spelling your name across the night sky. You don't even know how to feel about that. A little amazed, a little disturbed, a little gassy from the vinegar. When you stir, the man is already at your side, holding a scroll. He shows you sketches of other dream symbols gathered in this chamber over the years. Yours is not the first firefly jug, nor the first skywriting. It comes in cycles, he says. That dream appears every 17 years. He gestures toward a small engraving on the wall. It's dated. Exactly 17 years ago to the day. Now, you really feel weird. He hands you a sprig of mint. For grounding, he says. And just like that, you're ushered out the back door, into another corridor, into another part of the garden. Your next guide is already waiting, and you apparently are part of a pattern. You follow your next guide, barefoot, silent, tall as a cypress, through a moonlit colonnade lined with sleeping fig trees. A gentle wind sifts through the lattice above, casting moving shadows on the sandstone. Ahead, an ancient wooden door creaks open into what appears to be a perfumery, but not the kind you're used to. This room smells like memory itself, crushed petals, sun-warmed clay, old parchment, fresh rain on stone. The air is thick with something that makes your shoulders lower and your eyes blink slower. Your guide motions toward an octagonal bench surrounding a fountain with concentric circles of floating herbs. Rosemary, myrtle, mint, thyme, and tucked near the center, a blooming saffron crocus. Tonight, you learn, is about olfactory diagnosis, an obscure but absolutely real method used by medieval Persian physicians to detect illness through the scent of sweat breath or even dreams. Yes, dreams. A mainstream fact in medieval Persia, the physician and philosopher Avicenna wrote that certain diseases could be detected by the smell of exhaled air. A fruity scent suggested diabetes. A fishy aroma might indicate liver disorders. And breath that resembled rotting apples, possibly internal abscesses, less mainstream, but documented in scattered medical treatises. Certain mystics claimed they could smell spiritual imbalance or unresolved grief. One even claimed to predict a patient's death up to 7 days in advance based on a specific type of cold sweetness in their scent. Your guide hands you a rolled cloth embedded with dried flowers and charred cedar. Hold this to your nose. Inhale, slowly. You do. The scent is strong, almost bracing. Then he lights a small censer and places it beneath your chair. The smoke rises in slow, predictable spirals. If your dreams are out of harmony, he says softly, they'll show themselves in how you respond to scent. He tests you with a series of aromatic samples: sandalwood, bitter, orange paponax resin, aged wine vinegar. Some make your jaw tighten. Others open a surprising memory: a forest path, a cousin's scarf, a market stall from your childhood. The guide nods each time. Every reaction is a story. He notes something in a small book, then beckons you toward a side table where 7 stoppered bottles wait in a line. Each is unlabeled but uniquely shaped: a teardrop, a crescent, a leaf, a flame, a mask, a door, and an hourglass. You're told to choose the one that feels like you. You reach for the leaf. It's warm in your hand. He unstopples it. Inside is a scent so sharp, so vivid, that you nearly stumble. Crushed green almond river rock, the exact scent of an approaching thunderstorm. It feels correct. You can't explain it. Some say this scent connects to dreams about unfinished journeys, he explains. And if I had chosen the mask, then you'd likely be haunted by questions of identity. Historians still argue whether this form of diagnosis was pseudoscience or a proto-psychology ahead of its time. Skeptics cite a lack of reproducibility. Advocates argue that smell is deeply tied to memory, and memory to the subconscious. So perhaps the ancients were tapping into something modern clinics have simply forgotten. The guide dips his fingers into a bowl of rose oil and touches it lightly to your temples. Tonight, he says, when you sleep, the scent of almond will guide the river. Let it carry what you don't need anymore. It sounds beautiful. You almost believe it. He opens a panel in the back wall, revealing a corridor made entirely of carved lattice, the scent of hyacinth drifting through from somewhere unseen. And so, guided by breath, memory, and aroma, you move on to the next chamber of Persian dreamcraft, carrying the ghost of green almonds in your lungs. The corridor opens into a room unlike any you've entered so far, dim, circular, and deeply quiet. No water flows here. No birds chirp from hidden niches. Instead, there's only silence, the kind that hums in your ears when you realize the walls are covered entirely in polished stone. Obsidian, maybe, or some dark mineral that reflects candlelight in strange patterns. You're not alone. 8 other figures sit in a ring around a low brazier. Their faces are covered, not ominously, just veiled, like the cloth is part of a shared ritual. At the center, on a square stone platform, lies a book. Not a typical manuscript with ink and parchment. This one is etched into soft stone tablets, stacked neatly and smoothed by hundreds of fingers over time. This is the circle of recorded dreams. A mainstream historical fact: Persian scholars, particularly those influenced by Zoroastrianism and later Islamic mysticism, often kept dream journals, not only personal ones, but communal ledgers of dream reports. These were used to track not only divine messages, but also social trends, omens, and public health. If a village had a sudden rash of dreams about flood or famine, it was taken seriously. The dream keepers here serve two functions. They record dreams exactly as told, and they listen for patterns. You're invited to contribute. "But I don't remember last night's dream," you whisper. One of the veiled figures leans forward. "Then recall a dream that haunts you." Strangely, one surfaces. It's old. You're running through narrow corridors that smell of chalk and garlic. A voice is calling your name, but when you turn, there's no one there, just a mirror. And your face in it isn't yours. You speak this aloud haltingly. Another figure writes it into a wax tablet with a stylus. When they finish, they say only, "That one has been seen before." Not often, but it returns. A quirky detail: some dream keepers believed specific dreams migrated between people. That is, a dream might leave one sleeper and enter another, especially if the original dreamer ignored its message. According to a 13th century record from Yazd, there was once a wandering dream of the serpent door that showed up in 11 unrelated villages over the course of 3 years. You shift uncomfortably. Yours doesn't sound quite as exciting as a serpent door. But someone else across the circle gasps softly. "The mirror dream," they whisper. "I dreamed that when I was 12. Historians still argue whether these communal records were more about social cohesion than metaphysical truth. Was it a way of binding communities together through shared myth? Or did they truly believe dreams could transmit between minds? The truth likely lies in the middle, where belief shaped experience and experience reshaped belief. The brazier flickers. Another figure begins reciting a dream from memory voice, low and rhythmic. You catch fragments. A golden tree with bells for leaves. A city made entirely of bird cages. I opened my mouth and sand poured out. Each dream is logged gently without comment. No interpretations are offered here. The goal is not to explain, but to remember. When the circle closes, you're handed a small scroll, your dream transcribed. On the back is a symbol, a cracked mirror surrounded by almond branches. It's a reminder, the dream keeper says softly. Dreams are like seeds. If ignored, they will seek new soil. You leave through a door carved to resemble a closed eye. Outside, you realize dawn is near. The stars are fewer now. The moon hangs lower, and something about your breath feels cleaner. You have 10 more chambers to pass through. And yet this circle of silent witnesses, of wandering dreams, might stay with you the longest. You step into a long, low chamber filled with the rustle of parchment. The sound is everywhere, soft, rhythmic, like a breeze moving through dry leaves. But it's not wind. It's people scribes, dozens of them, seated cross-legged at shallow wooden desks, each lit by a small clay lamp, each copying dreams onto paper with reeds dipped in indigo ink. Welcome to the house of oniromancy, a place where Persian scholars once turned the ephemeral fog of sleep into coded symbols and preserved them for interpretation, teaching, and sometimes political manipulation. A mainstream fact in medieval Persia, dream interpretation called tabir was a respected intellectual tradition, with scholars such as Ibn Sirin and al-Damiri producing vast compendia of dream symbols and their meanings. These works traveled far beyond Persia, influencing Islamic Spain, North Africa, and even Christian Europe. Here, dreams weren't just personal riddles. They were categorized, classified, and sometimes even weaponized. A ruler's advisors might consult dream interpreters before making state decisions. The right dream at the right time could legitimize a war, a marriage, or a new law. The quirky part: these interpreters developed highly specific symbolic dictionaries. Dreaming of carrots, for example, might suggest troublesome relatives, a donkey crossing water, likely a long but successful journey. A spoon breaking could warn of an argument with one's wife. And if you dreamt of a fish reciting poetry, don't laugh. This meant unexpected fortune in business. You walk slowly among the scribes, glancing over their shoulders. Each scroll is marked not only with a dream's content, but with the dreamer's age, occupation, dominant, hand-moon phase, and, get this, the position they slept in. Historians still argue whether such precision had actual diagnostic value, or whether it was more about the illusion of control. After all, who wouldn't feel reassured if their chaotic nightmare was neatly explained by a page of organized symbols and ink? One elderly scribe waves you over. Would you like your dream interpreted? You hand him your scroll from the dream-keeper's circle. He examines it, frowns thoughtfully, and then turns to a thick, leather-bound volume beside him, its corners cracked, its spine bloated with inserted slips of paper. After a few moments, he nods. The chalk corridors suggest a struggle to express yourself, possibly in writing. Garlic means protection, though some say it wards off betrayal. The mirror is identity, and if your face isn't your own, that implies transformation. You're changing faster than you realize. You blink. He looks up. It's not a prediction. It's a reflection. Another scribe beside him chuckles. Or indigestion. Never rule that out. You laugh, and the tension in your jaw releases. As you move toward the exit, you notice one wall is covered with thousands of tiles, each etched with a symbol, a tree, a crescent moon, an eye, a scorpion, a fish. These are the master index of recurring dream motifs. The fish appears more than any other. A whispered joke follows you. The dream fish swims faster than memory. At the door, a young apprentice stops you and presses a thin scroll into your palm. Just in case you forget, she says. You open it, a tiny illustration of a figure gazing into a mirror their reflection smiling back differently. You fold it quietly and slip it into your sleeve. And as you walk into the next corridor, something in your chest shifts. Not alarm, not peace, just curiosity. The corridor narrows, dimming until you reach a heavy velvet curtain. It smells faintly of frankincense and old tears. Yes, if grief had a scent, this would be it. You draw it aside and step into a hushed chamber. It feels like a funeral parlor, but there is no body laid out. Instead, at the center of the room lies a shallow clay basin filled with black sand. Beside it, a brass ladle, a silver bell, and a scroll wrapped tightly with a red string. You've entered the Hall of Forgotten Dreams. A woman in a slate-gray robe greets you without words, only a nod. Her face is bare, her eyes calm. You can tell instantly she's not an interpreter. She's a closer. Her role isn't to analyze, but to seal away dreams that have become too heavy to bear. The ones that wake people up, sweating hearts, racing mouths open mid-scream. The ones people beg to forget. A mainstream fact, Persian physicians, particularly those trained in humoral theory, often believed nightmares were physical symptoms, an excess of black bile, or a liver imbalance, perhaps. But spiritual scholars argued that some dreams were visitations, messages from the unseen world that the human mind wasn't ready to carry. You sit as she unwraps the scroll. The red string unwinds slowly, and with it, a strange heaviness creeps into the room. You don't need to be told this is someone else's dream. You can almost feel it in the folds of the paper. The ink is smudged, but the symbols are vivid wolves with bleeding paws, staircases made of bones, a bird with its beak sewn shut. She ladles sand into the basin, then places the scroll beneath it. As she begins the ritual, she hums, a low, even vibration. It's not a song, not a melody, just vibration, like the deep purr of a mountain. A quirky custom among some Zoroastrian dream clerics. They believed that dangerous dreams, if not ritually buried, could echo through future dreams of others, spreading unrest like a fever. Hence the invention of Kwabshikan dream breakers, who neutralized toxic symbols, using fire salt or ink erased with rosewater and ash. The woman lifts the bell and rings it once. The sand settles. She leans in. Would you like to bury one? You hesitate. What would you forget if you could? Maybe the time you saw someone cry and walked away. Maybe the words you should have said. Or perhaps something from sleep. Something murky, recurring images of falling faceless children, a staircase with no top. You write it down. She doesn't read it. She simply folds it with care, ties the red string and presses it to her lips once, then buries it. No fire, no drama, just rest. Historians still argue whether these rituals were true spiritual exorcisms or symbolic therapies, cathartic acts for a people who lacked psychology but understood emotion intimately. Either way, it worked. For some, the nightmares never returned. Before you leave, she hands you a small pouch of white seeds. "Burn these in ghee," she murmurs. "Then sleep facing east." You nod, though you're not sure you will. Outside the curtain, the air smells lighter. You haven't said a word in this room, but something in you feels less crowded. Your next dream will have more space. You follow a corridor that curves like a spiral, rising so gently you don't realize you're ascending. It's only when you glimpse a window slit with stars that you understand you're higher now, not just in building, but in time. A brass lantern lights your way as you enter a quiet circular room with a domed ceiling painted with zodiac signs. A man in a green robe and gold-threaded sash waits beside a narrow bed. "Please," he says, gesturing to the cushions, "lie down as you did when the dream came." You blink. That's the test. He's a Sayat Bin, a time watcher, whose task is to interpret dreams based on exact timing, including the hour of sleep and the direction the dreamer faced. A mainstream fact in medieval Persian dream theory: dreams were thought to vary in reliability depending on when they occurred in the night. Dreams before midnight, influenced by digestion and body heat, were seen as reflections of worldly stress. But those just before dawn, as-Sadiq, or the truthful, were believed to hold prophetic insight. You stretch out on the cushions. The man observes, then nods. You faced west, third hour of the night. That's interesting. He retrieves a small hourglass, already half drained, and sets it beside your head. "Now tell me what you saw." You recount it: a field of tall grass, a door floating upright with no frame, laughter coming from under the soil. He listens in silence, then asks, "Did you eat dates before bed?" You blink. Yes. He nods. Dreams, sweetened by fruit, are known to bend toward false hope. Here comes the quirky bit: this particular school of interpreters also tracked planetary hours. They believed that if your dream arrived during a time ruled by Mars, it was more likely to be violent. If Venus ruled the hour, more romantic or deceptive. Mercury, confusion. Saturn, delay. Jupiter, blessing. Moon, change. Historians still argue whether these planetary correlations were taken literally or used as narrative devices, ways to organize meaning in a world that refused to explain itself. The man rises and fetches a scroll. He reads aloud a passage. "If thou dreamest of crossing a river by moonlight during the hour of Mercury, speak not of it for 3 days, lest the meaning scatter like ash." You wonder what ash has to do with meaning, but say nothing. He looks up. You dream often between the second and third hours. You nod. He leans forward. That's the hour of return. Not every dream, then, is prophetic. Some are echoes, residual emotions, bouncing back like distant thunder. You glance again at the hourglass. It's nearly empty. I suggest, he says, you change your sleeping posture. Place your right hand beneath your head. burn camphor, and he pauses, smiling dryly, maybe fewer dates. As you leave the chamber, he calls softly after you. Dreams don't lie, but we often mishear them. The hallway beyond is filled with clocks. None of them tick. All are set to slightly different times. Your footsteps feel weightless. You wonder what time is it now. In dream terms, you don't know. But maybe, just maybe, that's the point. You descend a staircase carved from polished stone, spiraling gently into cooler air. With each step, the lanterns grow dimmer, replaced by natural light that filters in from slits near the ceiling, moonlight soft and silvery. At the bottom, a pair of heavy cedar doors stand open, revealing a garden cloaked in shadow. But it's not just any garden. You step into a night garden, a sacred place reserved for interpreting shared dreams, those rare and peculiar visions that arrive to multiple people across the same household village, or occasionally empire. Yes, shared dreams, a mainstream fact. Persian mystical literature and some historical chronicles record instances where entire groups claim to have dreamt the same or similar visions, especially in times of political unrest, religious revival, or cosmic events like eclipses and comets. These were not treated lightly. The garden is lined with beds of night-blooming jasmine and queen-of-the-night cacti. Their scent is heady narcotic tinged with something slightly metallic. You see low stone benches arranged in circles, each with an empty center like a theater, waiting for a performance that unfolds behind the eyelids. The interpreter here is not a physician nor a cleric, but a dream mediator, someone trained not to read symbols, but to listen for resonance among multiple accounts. She approaches you barefoot, her long gray hair bound in silver threads. "We had 3 villagers last month," she whispers, "who all saw the same boat sinking. No sea nearby." The next day, the village's granary roof collapsed. Same shape, same sound. She offers you a ceramic cup filled with warm milk steeped in saffron and a whisper of nutmeg. Drink. Tonight we're recording a convergence. A few others arrive. Farmers, a young girl with hair still damp from a bath, and a man wearing a stonemason's apron. They sit in the circle without speaking. The mediator brings out a thick quilted cloth covered in stitched symbols, eyes, ladders, keys, suns, broken circles. Each person places a hand where they feel drawn. The girl chooses the key. The stonemason chooses the ladder. You somehow choose the broken circle. Historians still argue whether shared dreams reflect genuine psychic connection or are simply the result of communal anxieties seeping into subconscious minds. There's no consensus, just stories. Tonight's convergence theme: a child calling from behind a wall. Each person speaks. Their words differ, but the shape is the same stone wall. Child's voice, urgency, unseen danger. The mediator listens. This dream is not personal. It is protective. She records it in a leather-bound ledger under the title Convergence 4111. Now comes the quirky ritual. Each dreamer chooses a token, an object to carry until the next full moon. You're handed a small copper coin with a hole in the center. Should the dream recur, she says, you'll know what to do with it. You don't ask. Somehow the not knowing is the charm. The circle ends without ceremony. Everyone departs barefoot as they arrived. As you pass under the garden's arch, a wind stirs the jasmine. You look back and realize there is no wall, just a pattern in the leaves. But you still hear the child's voice. You wander back through the corridors now, draped in gauze-like curtains, each one stirring slightly, as if the building itself were exhaling. The air smells of cardamom and something older. Maybe ink, maybe memory. A bronze door creaks open ahead of you, and the scent sharpens into something unmistakable. Parchment, beeswax, and old cedar. You've reached the Quabnama Library, the dream archive. This is where recorded dreams go to be filed, categorized, whispered about, or in rare cases, never touched again. A mainstream fact, some Persian courts employed Quabnavi's official dream recorders, whose job was to write down the night visions of royals, viziers, and even favored servants. These scrolls were often sealed and stored in private libraries, consulted during decision-making, or when omens were needed. A stooped librarian nods to you, then shuffles back into the shelves. There are no signs, no labels, just towering rows of scrolls and bound tomes, each one marked with a small symbol, a bird, a crescent, a dagger, a spoon. Not words. Symbols were safer. You run your fingers across a shelf. The textures shift, smooth, silk bindings, rough leather, even one with an embossed eye that blinks when you touch it. Quirky detail. Some scribes believed that dream books should be alive in their own right, so they infused inks with silver leaf pomegranate juice or powdered turquoise to reflect the dream's mood. One book thuds off the shelf as if by its own will. You pick it up. Inside, dozens of dreams beginning with the phrase, "Last night, as I ate alone." Each one veers differently. One ends in music, one in fire, one with a single feather falling onto a black plate. You sit down cross-legged and keep reading. A woman once dreamt of her own burial, but in reverse. She rose from the earth, gathering her skin like fabric, and climbed a ladder made of her own ribs. The scribes debated whether it foretold rebirth or warned of anemia. Historians still argue whether these dream records were meant for real interpretation or simply functioned as private mythologies, a way for rulers to justify irrational decisions with celestial authority. The librarian returns and sets a quill beside you. Would you like to add yours? You hesitate. You think of that recurring image, the hallway that turns back on itself. The door that opens to a second version of your own room, same bed, same shoes, different you. You write it down. You choose a symbol, a spoon. Why? You're not sure. But it feels right. The librarian nods, binds your page, and places it on the shelf somewhere near a scroll marked with the same symbol. Your dream is not alone. As you rise to leave, you realize something: this place doesn't just collect dreams, it connects them. Threads between years, cities, strangers, one person's fear echoing as another's prophecy. In the end, you whisper, maybe that's all. History is a library of dreams, pretending to be fact. Outside, the curtains still move gently, as if welcoming a breeze only they can feel. The curtains part not by your hand, but by timing a servant's steps through, just as you approach. She carries a lantern shaped like a pomegranate, and inside its carved shell flickers a steady orange flame. No wind affects it. She leads you silently down a narrow hallway lined with paintings. But these aren't of saints or battles or royalty. They're paintings of dreams, rendered from memory by those who lived them. Some are disturbing a tree with human teeth for blossoms, a bird made entirely of eyelashes. But others feel oddly comforting: an ocean filled with pillows, a ladder climbing into a cloud made of bread. You arrive at a wooden threshold with no door. The servant gestures for you to enter. You step through. The floor is covered in silk rugs, none matching. The room is dim but warm. In the center sits an old woman, ink-stained fingers and a face carved from time. She is a Tabor Shenas, a master dream reader, but not the type who writes. She paints. A mainstream fact. Persian scholars believed that some dreams defied verbal interpretation and were best rendered through visual symbolism. The practice of dream painting was especially common among mystics and Sufi poets, who regarded language as too blunt an instrument for certain truths. The woman studies your face for a long moment, then beckons you to sit before her canvas. "What color was it?" she asks suddenly. You frown. The dream, no. The silence in it. You think, gray-blue. She nods, selects a brush, dips it into an ink pot, indigo, swirled with copper, and begins to paint without looking at the page. She asks no more questions, but the picture unfolds. Your dreamscape appears slowly from the blankness. A corridor, a door, the child behind the wall. But this time the child is made of smoke, and the door is made of pages. You watch in silence. Now the quirky detail: instead of painting your face, she paints the back of your head twice. Why, you finally ask? Because you never saw yourself in the dream. But someone did, and they remembered you. She signs the corner of the canvas with a symbol, not letters, not her name, just a ring of salt painted with the tip of her fingernail. "Take it," she says. "Hang it where you sleep." You hesitate. "Or burn it," she adds, "if the dream returns." Some dreams don't want to be remembered. They want to be released. Historians still argue whether these practices were genuine spiritual medicine or elaborate performance rituals. Some modern psychologists call it projection. Others call it art therapy with extra spice. But neither explanation feels like it can hold the silence she captured in blue-gray ink. You roll the painting gently and thank her. On the way out, you glance once more at the wall of dream paintings. One new canvas has appeared. It's of you seated before her, watching your own memory unfold. But the colors are reversed. The silence is red. You don't ask what it means. Tonight meaning can rest. You tuck the rolled canvas under your arm and return to the outer courtyard where dawn has not yet broken, but the stars have begun to pale. A man with a long walking staff waits by the fountain. He wears no shoes, and his beard is braided with strings of lapis. He greets you with a nod and begins walking, not toward the garden, not back into the building, but into the maze of sand paths just beyond the orchard. You follow him, of course. This is the garden of forgotten dreams, and it is unlike any other. A mainstream fact: some Persian mystics believed dreams that could not be interpreted or were too dangerous to speak aloud should be ritually forgotten. To forget well was considered an act of mercy, and some gardens were designed with winding, non-repeating paths that aided the process. Walk the garden, forget the dream. As you enter, the walls rise tall hedges of tamarisk and thornless roses, dense and shifting. The ground is soft sand, with patterns raked into it, swirls, zigzags, labyrinths, inside labyrinths. You realize you're not meant to find your way out. Not yet. The man stops before a pool shaped like an ear. He dips the staff into the water. Speak the part you wish to forget, he says. You pause. Then you whisper, "The child never called for help. I just assumed they needed it." He nods, lifts the staff, and draws a circle on the sand. From this point forward, you follow a new rule: no retracing steps. The quirky detail here: each turn in the maze is accompanied by a subtle change in sound. One turn hums like bees. Another pulses like a heartbeat. Another is utterly silent. Some turns even alter your sense of time. What feels like a minute becomes 20, or vice versa. You stop thinking about escape and start noticing how the hedges shimmer slightly with dew, how one leaf is entirely gold, how a cat, no, a fox, no, a shadow in the shape of a fox follows you at a distance. Historians still argue whether these memory gardens were literal places or metaphorical constructs described in poetry. Some say actual courtyards existed in Isfahan and Shiraz, where the layout was changed monthly by gardeners trained in both botany and theology. Eventually, the walls part. The man with the staff is waiting again, as if he never left. He offers you a small bowl of honey and flatbread, not to eat, just to hold. "You've left it behind," he says. "You'll remember that you forgot it. That's enough." You nod. The stars fade further, but the sun hasn't yet risen. Time here has softened like fruit left in the sun too long. You wonder if you walked back into the dream. Now, would it still belong to you? Would the child be gone, would you? But there's no going back. only forward. The garden behind you no longer feels real, as if it had folded itself into your memory the moment you stepped out. You emerge onto a flat terrace, bare stone, no plants, no shadows. Just the horizon, and seated at its edge a man in white, quietly grinding something with a mortar and pestle. You approach, but he does not look up. He's humming, something circular, something that never resolves. He's the final interpreter, but he will not speak. A mainstream fact, in late medieval Persia, some mystics trained in dream analysis believed that interpretation was sometimes best conveyed through ritual silence, allowing the dreamer to arrive at their own truth in contemplation. These mute sages were occasionally consulted by royalty for politically sensitive or deeply personal dreams. He hands you a slip of paper. It reads, "The dream ends when you stop asking what it means." You sit beside him. He continues to grind ginger root and dried orange peel, judging by the scent. The powder collects in the shape of a spiral. The wind does not blow it away. You feel your eyelids grow heavy. And now the quirky detail, according to a little-known manual found in a 14th century Shiraz library. Silence was sometimes broken only after the dreamer had counted their breaths to 601. Any less, and the dream would cling to the rib like moss. You start to count. Each breath uncoils tension you didn't know you carried, the uncertainty of the dream child, the symbol of the spoon, the painting with your back turned, the maze that stole your sense of time. Historians still argue whether the breath-counting practice had physiological merit or was merely a tool to lull the mind into a trance. But as your own breaths settle, the point becomes beautifully moot. You lose count, and when you open your eyes again, the sage is gone. Only the spiral of powder remains untouched by breeze. The terrace now glows with a faint light sunrise, or something internal. You stand. You carry nothing, not scroll, not painting, not memory. But in your pocket, a small object presses against your palm. You remove it. A carved stone, shaped like a spoon. You smile. You don't ask why. You simply walk forward. Your steps slow as you descend from the terrace, the sky now a soft canvas of apricot and rose. Each breath feels unhurried, like silk unraveling. The ground beneath your feet is cool stone, the kind that remembers moonlight long after dawn. Your hands hang loosely by your sides. No tension, no urgency, only quiet. Far off, you hear water trickling, perhaps a spring or the echo of one. Even that sound begins to fade, absorbed into the hush of morning. You feel as though the air has thickened slightly, like honey in early winter, still flowing just more gently. The dreams, the paintings, the fox made of shadow, the child behind the door, they all dissolve now, not erased, but folded neatly into the corners of your mind, where they will rest undisturbed until, if ever they wish to return. Your breath lengthens. Your heartbeat slows. The world narrows to the space behind your eyelids, where light and shadow swirl in quiet rhythm. Let it all go. There is nothing more to understand tonight. No riddles left to solve. Just this moment, this hush, this fading rhythm of footsteps and air. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on the surface of a quiet pool. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders fall. Let the mattress hold you, the pillow cradle you. The air wrap around you like a story too kind to end. You are not lost. You are not waiting. You are simply resting, and everything is still.